Hello and welcome to this presentation on consumer and producer surplus. Before you watch the rest of this, have you watched the video clip from Monty Python's Life of Brian, The Haggle? If not, why not stop and go to the following web address, or search YouTube for The Haggle and Monty Python and watch it before coming back. This topic looks at the gains from exchange that buyers and sellers achieve when they engage in trade. Before we go further, remember that demand curves slope downwards from left to right and supply curves slope upwards. If you haven't seen The Haggle, here's a brief synopsis. Brian has been chased by Roman soldiers and he runs into a marketplace where a stallholder is selling false beards. Brian's desperate for the false beard so he can disguise himself and is prepared to pay 20 shekels for it. The stallholder's angry. Brian won't haggle, as is the custom in Judea. When they finish haggling, though, a market price emerges of 16 shekels. Originally, Brian was prepared to pay 20 shekels, but now only has to pay 16. One way of thinking about this is that Brian's getting 20 shekels of utility, or usefulness, but only paying 16. Therefore, he's getting 4 shekels of utility for nothing, which is shown by the green shaded area on the graph. From previous work, we know that demand curves slope downwards from left to right. If another person less desperate than Brian comes looking for beards, they wouldn't be prepared to pay as much as him, let's say 18 shekels. A customer who was prepared to pay 18 shekels would, like Brian, have to pay the market price of 16. This person would then get 2 shekels worth of utility free. A third person who was only prepared to pay 16 shekels would pay exactly the market price. They'd get 16 shekels of utility, and this would match what they pay, so there's no surplus utility. Fourth person prepared to pay 14 shekels would go home empty-handed because they aren't prepared to pay the market price. If we add up all the green areas, this is what we call the consumer surplus, which is the utility received by the buyer but not paid for. Now, let's look at this trade from the stallholder's point of view. The stallholder paid 12 shekels for the beard, presumably from a false beard wholesaler. This means that when he sells the first beard at 16 shekels, he's making 4 shekels more than it cost him. The second beard, which he also sells for 16 shekels, cost him 14 shekels. Remember that supply curves slope upwards, and as he sells more, the costs of production rise. Therefore, the second beard sold achieves 2 shekels more than the cost. The third customer pays 16, which matches the stallholder's cost. Thus, if we add up the grey areas, we get the supplier surplus, or the amount the seller receives over and above his costs. Now, let's look at supply and demand together. The total amount of usefulness enjoyed by the consumers is therefore 20 plus 18 plus 16, which equals 54 shekels. However, the consumer only pays 3 times 16 shekels, which equals 48. Therefore, the total consumer surplus is equal to 6 shekels. If the consumer pays 48 shekels, it's necessarily true that the supplier receives 48 shekels. However, his costs are equal to 12 plus 14 plus 16, which equals 42. The supplier surplus is therefore equal to 6 shekels. Now let's look at this on a supply and demand diagram. I've used the same data from earlier presentations. Consumer surplus is shown by the yellow area. Producer surplus is shaded in pink. Total utility is shown by adding areas A, B and C. The supplier's revenue, which must be the same as the consumer's expenditure, is equal to areas B and C. This diagram then helps to show the gains that are made from trade. Without trade, there'd be no consumer or producer surplus, so the gains from trade are the yellow and the pink areas combined. Thank you very much for listening.